Chapter 7. Pa's Books. As mentioned earlier, my parents have owned since the early 1970s a complete 30-volume set of the Encyclopedia Americana, including 5 supplemental volumes, a Grolier's 10-volume The Book of Popular Science, and an alphabetical 4-volume medical encyclopedia set. No matter where we moved, these books traveled with us. As we crisscrossed the Pacific Ocean and the continental United States, from Taiwan to Texas. No matter where we lived, my parents housed it in the massive living room wall unit. They regarded these books as home decoration when not in use, and then as homework help for their kids later on. As our parents intended, these books became a great help to me and my siblings when we completed middle school and later high school research assignments. They came in handy when we couldn't get to a library in the years when Pa was stationed elsewhere. Mom pulled double shifts as a hospital cook and then, one promotion later, a dietary supervisor, and I was too young to drive. However, in all the years that we had these books, I never saw my parents actually read them. My family, for the most part, was not a book-reading family. While Mom and Pa sang us kids to sleep, they never read us a bedtime story. While Mom and Pa sometimes bought a self-help book here or there, usually about personal finances or dealing with stress, and Pa had a few well-used cookbooks, they weren't fiction book readers. They preferred their fiction delivered through movies and TV shows. In fact, by the time I was in my own bedroom in 8th grade, my family had a TV in every bedroom, in addition to the living room. At least one TV was on as long as somebody was in the house. In other words, my family was a TV-watching family. So, in late November 1986, I was flabbergasted, absolutely flabbergasted, when Pa came home from his tour in Diego Garcia. Among his few possessions was a copy paper-sized box filled to the brim with paperback novels. "Did you read all these, Pa?" I asked as I marveled at his collection. "Yes, at least twice, sometimes more." "Really?" I couldn't help sounding surprised. "Why?" He laughed. "The only TV channel recession we got was a grainy Hindi channel that seemed to play some version of the Mahabharata or Ramayana every 2 hours. The young guys only wanted to watch movies like Porky's and Revenge of the Nerds, and when it rained, the land disappeared, so we were stuck together inside. I had to do something, or else I would go crazy." "Can I read your books, Pa?" I asked, picking up one of them. It was Robert B. Parker's Early Autumn. "Sure." He nodded to the whole box. "You can have them if you want." Over the next months, as I adjusted to high school, my siblings went to different schools, Mom worked long hours, and Pa was at his next duty station, Naval Construction Battalion Center in Gulfport, Mississippi, I read all of Pa's books. Pa's taste in fiction was eclectic but entirely masculine. He had westerns from Lee L'Amour. I read them but never really got into them, perhaps because I wasn't really into the western genre to begin with. It was even worse when I read Pa's Clive Cussler action-adventure novels. Those had lots of overcomplicated plot lines and subplots with lengthy descriptions that didn't seem to add anything to the story. Also, Cussler's characters, even main characters, were so one-dimensional and the women characters so James Bond-esque girly that I often skimmed through the pages. It was different when I read Pa's Cold War spy and military thrillers. Perhaps because I was a Cold War kid with a father who disappeared for months on end on behalf of the U.S. Navy, I found this genre engrossing. 2 books rise above from my murky memory. I liked the unpredictable nature of Robert Ludlum's Osterman Weekend, especially since it was from the point of view of an unsuspecting civilian who becomes a reluctant hero. Much later, I bought with my own money Ludlum's comedic thrillers The Road to Gandolfo and The Road to Omaha, because of that same unsuspecting everyman-turned-reluctant hero character, which appealed to me. However, I really got hooked into Tom Clancy's The Hunt for Red October. It gave me an inside view of the U.S. and Soviet navies, as well as demystified that scary thing called the Soviet Union. Soviet Russia was no longer this monolithic juggernaut on the other side of the planet with its nuclear weapons aimed at us. There were cracks in that juggernaut, and those cracks were real thinking people, as fictionalized in Marco Ramius. In fact, I became a big fan of Tom Clancy all through high school. I checked out of my school library Red Storm Rising, Patriot Games, The Cardinal of the Kremlin, and Clear and Present Danger, as soon as those publications arrived. I suppose that was rather unusual for a teenage girl to do. In fact, I got in trouble, again, for reading a book when the teacher had already started class. This time it was Patriot Games and Mr. Peterson's Computer Math. Raphael. Sorry, Mr. Peterson. While I read a fair number of crime novels from Pa's collection, only one resonated with me, Robert B. Parker's Early Autumn. The detective series Spencer for Hire was on TV at that time, but I didn't connect the two at the time. What drew me to read the book over and over again was the story of a complicated yet self-assured middle-aged man who became a teacher and father figure to a lost boy. I admired Spencer, who cooked meals without recipes, did carpentry, read and quoted literature, treated a lady with respect, and fought when necessary. I also admired Paul Giacomin, the lukewarm, neglected 15-year-old whose trust in Spencer allowed him to learn how to be a man. This included being okay with crying and following his dream of becoming a dancer. For example, here's Spencer's reply to Paul's question of why people settle for miserable lives. Reality is uncertain. Lots of people need certainty. They look around for the way it's supposed to be. They get a television commercial view of the world. Businessmen learn the way businessmen are supposed to be. Professors learn the way professors are supposed to be. Construction workers learn how construction workers are supposed to be. They spend their lives trying to be what they're supposed to be, and being scared they aren't. Quiet desperation. In Parker's Early Autumn, I learned the word autonomous. Then I realized that personal autonomy was what my parents were teaching me how to be, not just someday, but now, when now meant when I was still in high school, like Paul. Pa also had a large science fiction collection that featured fiercely independent characters who used their individual skills and talents to solve seemingly impossible problems that come their way. Among his sci-fi books, one author that I saw again and again was Robert A. Heinlein. Pa had a lot of Heinlein novels. Starship Troopers, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, Stranger in a Strange Land, Time Enough for Love, The Cat Who Walks Through Walls, The Notebooks of Lazarus Long. Most of these books flew right above my head at the time. I was also mightily embarrassed with all the free-for-all sex that was described here and there. However, it fit the story and the characters, so I wouldn't call it gratuitous. As a storyteller, Heinlein gave strong, confusing stuff, especially a 14-year-old reader. But the freedom of an individual to make, follow through, and live with one's choices, often in spite of what one's society dictated was sensible and right in order to lead oneself and others, was a message that I got. This message tied all of Paul's masculine, crazy quilt of books together, autonomy and the leadership that flows out of that autonomy. And that's how I learned more about my dad's personal philosophy in a cardboard box of books than in my previous 14 years of being his daughter. Even though I read Pa's books, not once did Pa and I discuss what were in those books. Maybe it was just too awkward, what with the often adult themes in his books and him being my dad. Instead, we did things together that reflected Pa's books when Pa came home on the weekends from Gulfport. He taught me how to check and top off fluids, check the tires air, and change a flat tire. He showed me how to use hand tools and do basic home repair. This led to my love of This Old House and The New Yankee Workshop on PBS. When I learned how to drive, he showed me how to read a map and how to get lost without a map. He taught me how to make tasty meals from whatever was in the kitchen, and we watched cooking shows like Yan Can Cook and Homegrown with Justin Wilson. He showed me how to read a manual so I could upgrade a desktop computer, put together a gas grill, assemble furniture, and record movies and TV programs with a VHS tape machine. He taught me that singing or listening to music while doing tough things made the doing feel easy. He showed me how to move furniture without killing myself. Use your legs! Pa was in Gulfport from late 1986 to early 1989, nearly 3 years when he missed a large part of our family's daily life. Since he saw me as the oldest child, he turned to me for assurance that everybody was safe and happy when he was gone. Before he left for Gulfport on Sunday, he always said to me, "I depend on you. Help your mom. Help your brother and sisters." "Okay, Pa," I always replied. When he returned on the weekends, Pa kept his early morning physical training. Sometimes I joined him. We'd go to Naval Air Station Dallas, park next to a least-used airstrip, and jog around the perimeter as the mist rose from nearby Mountain Creek Lake and the sun burned it off. When a jet took off, we'd stop and admire it as it screamed down the runway and took flight. We seldom talked. Our breaths and sneakered feet hitting the perimeter road were the only sounds. On those jogs, I noticed that Pa wasn't tall at all. He was only 5'4", only 2 inches above me, which surprised me. In my head, Pa was always a big man. In many respects, he still is.